So we have you have the big beautiful bill, what we were talking about, and then you also have the rescissions. These are things we've been discussing for the past, I don't know, couple of weeks, I guess. Well, the past week. And we're going to dive into it further if you're just joining us. Welcome back. Dana Loesch here with you at the bottom of this third hour. You can listen coast to coast. Channel 347 is the stream. The chat's at Rumble, all kinds of good stuff. Joining us right now, Joseph Wade Miller is the senior advisor for the Center for Renewing America. And he also worked with Ted Cruz. He's worked with Chip Roy, Congressman Chip Roy. And he joins us now via video. Wade, it's good to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. So we have the big beautiful bill, and then there is also, separate from that, this request from the president that a lot of people are learning about for the first time. Although it's been, we got a couple hundred years of precedent for this. I mean, it's the impoundment. A president can say, yeah, I got this money, I don't want to spend this money, and reinforce that idea with Congress, and then Congress can take action or not. And these are two separate ways that we're trying to tackle this big giant mess of runaway spending and enforce a little bit of austerity. Tell us a little bit about what some of the strategy is with the rescissions, because that seems to be, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, where a lot of the fiscal hawks they're putting all their eggs in that rescissions basket, because I get the feeling that they think that that's the best strategy for accomplishing this for voters.
That's right. And it's important. Thanks for having me on. It's important to understand that DOGE cuts almost entirely are mandatory spending, so we can't do that on the current reconciliation
Correct.
process. A lot of people are saying they want to see more cuts, and certainly I'm for more cuts on reconciliation bill, but we can't get a lot of the DOGE cuts because they wouldn't pass the Byrd rule in the Senate. So the strategy behind the scenes has been to use the rescissions process. And prior to the 70s, presidents used impoundment authority. And then in the 70s, during the Nixon era, Congress passed a law, and I would argue unconstitutionally, revoking the impoundment authority of the president and then instituting this new regime in which rescissions exist. And so, in a nutshell, you're going to see a package today. And what that rescissions package will say is, these are things we'd like to cut. At that point, the president can withhold funding for 45 days. During that period of time, Congress has to vote for it, or if they don't bring it up, it just fails after 45 days. That's the normal rescissions process. What a lot of people don't know, most members of Congress, most congressional staffers, quite a few people just don't know, is about a lesser known process known as pocket rescissions. And because the president can withhold funding for 45 days, if you do a pocket rescission after roughly August 18th, it automatically goes into effect. And the reason that is because the president will withhold that funding for 45 days, surpassing September 30th. So once you get to October 1st, there's no more authority. You lose the budget authority to spend funds in fiscal year 25. So the rescission cuts, any package that's submitted at that point would automatically go into effect. So naturally, a lot of us and conservatives have been clamoring to get DOGE cuts. And that is a completely rational argument if you don't know what a pocket rescission is, which most members of Congress until this week did not. Most staffers still do not, and we're educating them through that process. So it's a completely rational and logical thing to say, why aren't you doing more? And also in the context that, I live in the DC area. I've been doing this for a long time. I am used to, as a conservative, the establishment and leadership saying, we can't do it right now, but trust us, we'll do it later. So here I am saying, we have to pass the package that's coming forward today. If that package doesn't pass, we cannot use a pocket rescission on it later. So it's very important that everyone supports the upcoming rescissions package. But after this, I would say it is in our strategic best interest to say no more rescissions packages, do it all after August 18th. Because then no matter what Congress does, they can vote against it, they can vote fully to support it, they can vote for half of it, it automatically happens. And I think that this is a really easy path for us to rack up all of Elon Musk's DOGE cuts plus some, get some additional reforms that way. And then we can look later this summer at also the impoundment process and see how that might be used. There's a lot coming, but we need to be careful and not get ahead of ourselves and urge too much expediency on this, and then give Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins an ability to take away our ability to get these DOGE cuts enacted.
And that's a really good point. I love the idea of running out that budget authority on that, running out the clock. I mean, and that's essentially what it is. in doing this. And this is fascinating. We're talking with Wade Miller. He's with Center for Renewing America. I know, and I was looking back in history because I know this process has been used before. Is there any concern about because you mentioned too with I think it was the Impoundment Control Act, and it was like in the 70s. I know that there have been legal objections to whether it was Nixon, and I think even back in 2019 when Trump sort of tried this, and it involved, from what I understand, like some money that was appropriated for Ukraine, and he kind of got knocked back on it. Is there any worry that such a legal objection could arise from doing it this way with DOGE cuts?
I don't think so. I think that there is a legitimate legal debate to be had on impoundments, although I think that the argument for impoundments is that they are constitutional, and that the Impoundment Control Act in the 70s unconstitutionally restrained that executive authority. But on rescission specifically, in the 70s, the GAO specifically said, look, Congress, so Ford did this, and the GAO said that this is a statutory provision. You guys wrote this ability for the president to do it. You may not like it, but your remedy to this is, if you don't want the president to do it, to change the Impoundment Control Act. And Congress has not done that. And then fast forward to 2019, the GAO basically said the opposite. I think that this lends credence to the fact that the GAO is now weaponized against the Trump admin. And I think that if you look at the statute, you look at what previous GAO reports have said, I think it really exposes the GAO for the kind of the partisan weaponized regime that it is now. And so I wouldn't put too much credence. I wouldn't be surprised if the GAO came out and said that this isn't valid. But given history, given the fact that previous presidents have done this, given the clear statutory nature of the process, I would argue that we'd be on pretty firm grounds with the courts that this would go through.
Yeah, and that's good to hear too, because that was the first thing I thought of. They're trying to litigate every single thing that happens during this administration, regardless of the executive authority that he has, that POTUS has to act. And it's just like, oh, here would be another legal fight on this. When you talk about some of the DOGE cuts that could be incorporated into this pocket rescission, how far can we go right up to the line before, as you said, it makes some of the people in the Senate a little nervous?
I mean, there's a lot of buckets of money. So the reason we don't see pocket rescissions often, and haven't in a long time, is that they have to be done after August 18th. And usually there's not a lot of money left unspent in August. It's usually mostly spent. The Trump administration has been very responsibly withholding a lot of different funds and deciding not to expend certain funds on various legal and technical grounds. So we're in a rare situation where we're going to have significant pots of money. And what's that total amount? I don't know what it ultimately would be, but it's a lot. It's tens and tens of billions of dollars. It's a lot more than the rescissions package total that we would see today. And then there's additional cuts that you could see included that aren't necessarily DOGE specific that could be done through rescissions. There's a lot of authority there, and I have all the confidence in the world that this current OMB team wants cuts enacted and that the president wants his agenda advanced. So I think we're in a good position for a lot to happen after August.
Is it give away too much of the strategy if you try to force because I know a lot of people were talking about slow walking this rescissions package. Talk a little bit about the strategy of having to propose this in order to do the pocket rescission later.
Well, I don't know what the White House's strategy is. They are, and this is a good thing, they do not leak like they did in the last admin. So we're not privy to all of the specific details of how they are viewing this. If I had to theorize, my guess is that this is kind of an arcane old process. They understood that it would take a lot of education. They wanted to allow the window to condense a little bit before they started having these conversations. This pocket rescissions was discussed on CNN just yesterday or the day before. That's the first time I've seen it kind of publicly talked about. We've had a paper on it for a week, but the admin did say the word pocket rescissions on CNN. So I think that they're starting to have this conversation. And of all of the leadership staffers that I've been talking with, who are usually, not necessarily rowing in the same direction, they love this. And all of the members that I've talked to, they love this concept of pocket rescissions. And it solves a lot of our problems. There's a lot of cuts that we can't include on reconciliation, but we can get through rescissions. And so when you look at all of these various vehicles, and don't get me wrong, if reconciliation gets even better, that's great. So let's support that. But at the end of the day, we have to look at the totality of what all of these bills are going to look like at the end of the year to really assess how much are we spending this year versus how much are we cutting, and what trajectory is that putting us on. And when you factor in tariff revenue, when you factor in Whether you like tariff or not, there is gonna be some sort of revenue to that. When you factor in the tax cuts, when you factor in the mandatory spending cuts, when you factor in rescissions, I think that that's putting the administration in a pretty good spot by the end of the year in terms of what year one cuts look like, especially compared to anything that happened in the last Trump administration. This is going to be a successful year if you're a fiscal hawk, I believe.
Oh man, I hope, I hope you're right, because I am a fiscal hawk and nothing would make me happier. Oh, when they talk about cutting money, I get excited like it's my birthday.
And a lifetime of disappointment. So
I
also
know,
understand the
because
hesitancy.
we've been promised, and I think that's why everybody, I don't want to say sour, but everybody's really critical. Like I just saw, I mean, I'm sure you saw this, not even I guess maybe it was a half hour ago. Elon Musk came out, blasted the big beautiful bill. Mainly on the absence of some of the DOGE cuts. I know that the tax cuts are not permanent. Those are, that's capped at 4 years, so they could kind of fudge a CBO score. I get all of that. Do you think that Musk weighing in on this is going to maybe allow for more pressure to be applied to these members of Congress so that the rescissions can pass? And does that make it, do you think, more likely for a pocket rescission to be successful?
It's a good question. I don't know the specifics. I did read Elon's tweet. I'm not sure specifically what he's talking about. He's talking about pork filled. There is some defense money. There's border money. But aside from that, not a lot of spending. There's tax cuts. I don't consider that to be spending either. I'll have to look at that. I do know that there are some senators who want to add additional cuts in here. And if that's how this shakes out, that's great. I'll take it. But I do think that we need to get this done. The bill does need to get done. There is important border money in there. There's important tax cuts that are included. There are 1.6 trillion in mandatory spending cuts, and a lot of that is ramped up in the earlier years now because of the fight that HFC had to improve the timeline on those mandatory cuts. And for context, the Newt Gingrich welfare reforms in real dollars today would be about 800 billion. This has 1.6 trillion in mandatory spending reduction. It's a big win on the mandatory front. Now, we can always do more, but we have other bites at the apple. We can do reconciliation again this year. There's another authority to be able to use a second one this year. We can do one early next year. We can do rescissions next year. We can do additional DOGE reforms and DOGE cuts. There's a lot on our table.
Why are lawmakers not saying what you're saying right now?
It's a great question. And now, some of this may be, especially if you're a conservative, you may be wanting to hold your cards close to your chest to use leverage to get this bill in a better place. So there's some incentive if you're a conservative member to not paint this rosy picture, get your wins, and don't make it easy for leadership or moderates to get you to a yes. But we do need ultimately to get to a yes on this bill. There's too much writing on it. As long as it doesn't go backwards, then I think that we're in a good spot. I don't think it's pork filled. And some of this may be, I'm not sure, I can't speak for Elon. I don't know if he understands that DOGE cuts can't be done on reconciliation. And he may think, I've done all this work, why isn't it on reconciliation? And it's just a process. It's a bird rule issue that it would be considered extraneous and not pass in the final bill. But we have a plan for DOGE cuts. We know how to get them done. That's what we're talking about here, and that's what we're trying to educate members of Congress on.
It's such a double-edged sword, because I feel like if more lawmakers came out and said, okay, well, maybe you don't like everything that's in this, but if we get these rescissions, we can get it. I understand it, because then you're kind of telegraphing what your moves are.
A little bit, yeah, that's right.
Oh, that makes it tough.
You want to squeeze out every last ounce of every part of this process, meaning you want to get the reconciliation bill to the best place. So I could see why strategically some conservatives would be in that position right now. But I do think when you put all the pieces of the puzzle together, if we get the big, beautiful bill done, we're in a good place. And I don't say this often. I'm usually very pessimistic. I usually think
I've read about you. I know you're not very optimistic when it comes fiscally. I looked you up. That's a very good point. Very good point. Well, I would love to circle back with you as this, because we'll see where this goes. Whether we're able to accomplish this with rescissions, a pocket rescission. I know everybody's going to be watching this, but Wade Miller, so appreciate you coming on and laying all of this out for everybody. Would love to have you back. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course, appreciate it.